I'm Wyatt Cash at Scoop News Group, and we're here with Mike Shortino, Principal Digital Strategist at Salesforce. Michael, thank you so much for joining us.
No, thanks for having me.
So let me start by asking, in your opinion, what's the biggest storyline in federal IT over this past year?
Well, it's probably not a unique perspective, and I think we've all lived through the last year. And I think the events of the last year, specifically the COVID-19 crisis and the following response to that crisis has certainly been the biggest impact on our business. Frankly, we pivoted, mid-year. Everything that we had planned going into last fiscal year had to change. And I think that really, was reflected in our customer base here in the federal civilian space. And I think those events have driven an acute need for new government services and support. And this is where, I think we've played the biggest, part in helping with the response. And I think this has really led to a growing recognition that IT needs to both reliably support existing mission areas, which has been kind of the traditional focus, as well as mission expansion. And that mission expansion can happen quite rapidly. And so in other words, agility and innovation have really gone from being aspirational or nice to haves to being mission critical. And we're really seeing that reflected in our daily discussions with customers.
Well, I think you'd agree the nation's also faced a significant uptick in cybersecurity attacks in 2020 and 2021. How can the federal government, in your estimation, lead the way to protect information and national interests against adversaries like we've been facing of late?
Yeah, absolutely. And this is a space that I've had some involvement in for well over a decade. And I'll tell you, kind of early on in the process, the government was really playing catch up. When I talked to cyber experts on the commercial side, they said it was really, a one-way street in terms of where the best practices and the information on threats were coming from. And we've seen a real shift in that, which I think it really reflects the growing awareness and desire to solve the problem. But it's a big problem. It's one of these big, hairy problems that keep people up at night. And like a lot of those big problems, it really helps to break it down into some manageable chunks and to aggregate solutions. And leveraging knowledge and expertise and capabilities to collaboratively solve, what is really a shared challenge across the government. And so a great example of this is really the approach the government's taken around FedRAMP and ATO in terms of, providing the guidance and the accreditation, facilitating, the framework itself, as well as the way we think about the problem, while implementation is really being distributed out to the agencies. And the individual application owners within those components. And, this really allows the CISOs and the application owners to really, aggregate the problem for themselves, really reusing, in some cases, controls at the platform level, enabling them to focus oversight and approval on the delta between where the platform ends and that new application or use case begins. And this is an example, I think, of an area where the federal government has incentivized continuous compliance. And that is really a work in progress. But I think more of that is really the proper role, so that we can reduce risk while still improving time to value, which is, as we talked about, an increasing imperative.
Well, next, how would you characterize the pace and success of federal digital transformation efforts today compared to, just the past couple of years? And what do you attribute that to?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think in the short term, I guess back to the events of the last year in terms of really the impetus for this change. But in the short term, I think those events really acted like a prism, is how I like to think about it, right? Where certain things really got more important and accelerated, and certain things were, left to maybe go on pause, right? And so that, aspect of certain things accelerating and certain things slowing down is something we saw right away that was really based on where the focus needed to be in the immediate response phase. But long term, I think everybody's got a growing recognition that, amongst leaders and stakeholders, that digital transformation is really that universal imperative, and that essentially the idea that government can continue offering analog, manual, and siloed services is a thing of the past.
Well, and then lastly, Michael, and maybe on a more personal note, what in the federal technology landscape excites you most in the days and months to come?
Yeah, part of this is my personal journey and the fact that, I started out my career being very focused on technology and soon found that really the determinant of success or failure across all the transformations that I was involved in was really more on the people and the process side. There's that famous Drucker quote that culture eats strategy for breakfast, right? And so in my mind, that's what's the most exciting part of this is this noticeable shift. I just got off with a customer, and you can sense the mindset shifting amongst these leaders, both on the IT and the mission side, which is even more exciting, towards this idea of being, more lean, agile, and user-centric in terms of how they think about these problems. Being able to kind of lean into the fail fast, fail early in some cases where it's appropriate, and that shift in mindset really, to me, is a marker of the shift in the culture of the government, which is consistently cited as an inhibitor to digital transformation. And that process takes a long time. And so when we start to see these signs that the mindset is shifting at the leadership level, that gives me, a lot of hope that that's going to percolate down and change the culture writ large and really accelerate the change.
Absolutely. Well, Michael Shortino, thank you so much for sharing your observations and insights on the federal government landscape and for joining us here at FedTalks.
Thank you very much.